I'm your host, Marsha Florence, for Just Ask Podcast Live. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. Now, let me say this before we really get started. Normally, our day is Thursdays, and so we had some technical difficulties last week. So we wanted to do the opportunity and bring our guest back and allow her to have the moment to share with our viewers the show that we were intending to do on Thursday. So I don't want to waste a lot of time in my introduction because you know who she is when she comes up. But ladies and gentlemen, anytime that we miss our original date, please remember we will come back all the way around and air a show at another or later date. So we are airing at a later date in the week, but we're making sure that you get that weekly resources that you are used to or accustomed to. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce my wonderful guest, my returning guest, who always comes with a quarterly information of resources that you guys need to know about and consider using in some of your times of needs, family needs, things of that nature. So without further ado, where's she at? Hey, Patricia Rencher.
Hey, Marcia. Hello. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you as usual.
Absolutely.
Now, Pat, you know, this is our quarterly meeting, and so I told the audience, you know, that there's no way we're going to miss the opportunity to hear what's happening in the urban aging news. So we definitely had to bring you in when we could. So we appreciate your patience with us and, you know, getting past all these technical difficulties to make sure that we share the resources that you have. So anything new that we need to know about before we jump into this wonderful paper?
No, other than we're going to focus on caregivers in this issue. It's my annual caregiver issue.
Caregivers issue. You know, the caregiver situation is rapidly growing. Caregivers now, Pat, are not just adult children. They're young children as well whose parents are stricken with illnesses and stuff. And, you know, the young person has to step in and help out in various ways as they can. You know, it doesn't have to be financial. It just, you know, help mom get dressed, prepare breakfast, lunch, dinner, or whatever you can. Take, you know, dad to and from his appointments. So caregiving has a variety of needs, and it's not just always for the elderly. It could be for the disabled, just people in general. So what's your take on that? Anything that you want to say to our viewers about caregiving? Because you and I both has numerous opportunities in delivering caregiving services to our families.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of the research tells us that everybody is going to either need a caregiver or be a caregiver. So it's no wonder that I think that we've always had young people being caregivers, but it's just now that we're shining a light on caregiving in general, that we're paying more attention to the younger caregivers, and they need to be pulled in and provided with resources.
And it's also the diverse cultures as well. Now, a lot of times we don't know how other cultures take care of their loved ones, but we have an inkling of idea when we see families, you know, together. But nobody really pays attention, or I won't say pay attention. Nobody really has noticed that the variations in the diversity of caregiving for different cultures is probably similar to what we do, or unique in what we do, or even more extended than what we do.
Well, I think especially with the Solutions Journalism Project, we've made an effort to reach out to other ethnicities, to include them as part of the Caregiver Advisory Council. We have some Asian representation, Hispanic representation. So we understand that caregiving changes depending upon the culture, or it looks different upon the culture.
Yeah, and I believe it does look different. It's the same, but it just looks different. And I think that it's time for us to embrace, you know, the different methods and styles that people do, because really the resources that are being made available should be well known amongst all. Sometimes it just looks like only a certain population knows about the resources, and yet every population is experiencing the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right, Pastor, you know, I know we can't wait to get into this wonderful paper as usual. But before we go to that, you know, ladies and gentlemen, you can always reach out, okay, to Pat Rencher at Urban Aging News. See the wonderful phone number down there and the web address. Now, Pat, I know that your publication comes out quarterly, and people can get the paper how?
They can, we have a variety of different distribution sites, over 200 distribution sites in Wayne, Oakland, Macomb counties, libraries, senior centers, doctors' offices, independent grocery stores, and the like. And if someone is interested in having the paper delivered to their organization or their church, that they can contact me at that number, and we can add them to the distribution list.
Yeah, and you also have an online method too, right?
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. I almost forgot that each issue is automatically posted on our website, urbanagingnews.com.
Okay. Well, let's get started with this paper because, you know what? When I saw this cover, I was just like, I got soft for a moment, Patty. You know, brought back memories of, being a caregiver. So, wanted to go to the caregiver on the front line. That's your cover page for this quarterly edition. So, this is the fall edition.
This is the fall 2022 edition. Yes.
Okay. Anything in particular you want to talk about on this cover sheet?
Well, what I wanted to say was those photos actually were part of a story that the Detroit News ran in September. And they took a look at caregivers in Wayne, Macomb, and Oakland counties. And there's a full story, a 2-page spread with lots of interesting data and the stories of caregivers. And so I just captured the photos, the caregiver couples that were featured in that story. And then in my editorial, I talk about where folks can find the story because it's available in the Detroit News for free to read.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm just reading over the information under the caption information under each photo. And two of them says something about dementia, but say who has dementia receiving loving care from full-time caregiving daughter Doris Rainey. I'm just looking at it, and it's to me aging has its place, but then when you have some dynamics with it, it goes into another level. So just like looking at the picture with Nikita Gaither tends to the swollen feet of her mother, Dorothy Gaither. So, sometimes when you're doing caregiving and medical and social work and all that at the same time. Okay, so caregiving doesn't just mean, ladies and gentlemen, I'm preparing a meal. I'm making sure that, dad or mom has their dentures or they're watching TV. Caregiving can go a long way. And to me, it starts with knowing their condition, their health challenges, and being prepared to know what you have to do to help them in those hurdles of their health, to maintain it. So, I'm going to tell you something short about my dad. I went to see about my father. And my father had 12 bottles of medication, and I was like, there's no way he could take these different 12 bottles of medication every day and something is not being taken care of effectively. In other words, one medication may be counting out the other one, so it's not as strong or something's not right with these medicines. Took my father to the doctor. My brother usually takes them, so that's why I was like, okay, I'm just going to go in and see what's going on. So I take my father to the doctor, and I take all the pills to the doctor, and I said, can you tell me which one of these he can discontinue taking? And then after that, can you tell me what time of day can he take these pills? How often do he have to take these pills at what time of day? When we got through, my father was down to 4 bottles out of 12. 4. And he broke them down to what time of the day, and only 2 of them was to take at the same time. So I'm saying, people, when you get medication, you have to ask the doctors. How often, I've got several other kinds of medications. I need to bring all of them in. And you tell me which ones I can discard and which ones I have to take and what time. Because we people take a handful of pills and think that they all working, and no, they're not. I don't. But I did that for my father, and I did that for my mom, and I always remembered that you have to check on medications because, the doctor's writing a prescription. They don't mean any harm. They just trying to make you feel better and send you out the door. But somehow we're maybe over medicating our loved ones, and we don't know it. Okay.
Right. And you have to insist upon I'm working on a story now where we talk about how the average older adult may have 3 or 4 physicians, and oftentimes those physicians aren't in communication with each other. So that's why it's important to for the family,
Right.
for the primary caregiver to ask questions and to
Right.
see if those drugs are interacting with one another.
True that. True that. All right, Pat. So let's go through these pages here. I don't want to lose any time. So we got anonymous caregivers take on how to get siblings engaged. Oh yes. You know what I mean? That's
And
just
that
a half a page. That should be a whole page in a book. Go ahead, Pat. What were you going to say about this?
Well, a lot of the articles we really try to shorten because we know people don't have a lot of time to read. But this is a perfect segue from our previous conversation. Um, Families struggle. There's generally just one person in the family that's doing all the work. And so this is a take on how do you get your siblings to help? And a lot of times, this person framed it to their sisters and brothers, help me. If you don't want to help mom and dad, who happen to be your mom and dad, if you don't want to help them, here are some things that you could do to help me. And so that person lists stuff like maybe you can take the cars to be serviced or pick up the groceries. Or maybe you could be the person when you go into the doctor's office visit to make questions, to pose questions to the physician. Or maybe you can fill out some of those, the veterans form to be able to get additional funds. But there are ways to work around family members who won't help. Let's see if we could try this, some of these suggestions.
Yeah, yeah, and I see quite a few of them. You know, keep relatives and family friends updated on parents' health, make meals for the freezer, schedule and or attend medical appointments. You know, some siblings, you know, say that they don't want to see mom or dad like that. Okay, well, you don't want to see mom or dad like that, but remember now, this road goes a long way. After them comes you. So, I frown on families not being involved, and you know, I mean, hey, if you the one say I can't stand the sight of blood, you don't have to see blood, but you got some other things that you can do. Okay,
Absolutely.
if you say you know you got kids and I can't get over there, well, I tell you what, then you prepare the meals and then have them delivered. Do something, you know, but make yourself involved in your parents' care. One parent, two parents, just be involved in your parents' care. I'd rather, if you have a sibling that's a beautician or a barber, come over and cut the hair and do the hair, something like that, a manicure, pedicure, something that lets you know that that's your parent, you love them too, and you're involved in their care. Something small is better than nothing at all. That's my point. So you know I'm talking about experience. Okay, okay. All right, so what do we have here? Mobility challenges, quick ways to make your home accessible.
Well, this is in a lot of cases, you know, when they tell you that they're about to discharge you from the hospital, they give you very little instructions. And so this is an occupational therapist. I think she's out of Missouri, who has a company that she's listed here in this article, different things that you can the home to make it more accessible for your older adult. But she also has an online, what they call a accessibility assessment for your home. And so you can go online and she'll help you to identify things in your particular home that will create a more safe environment for your loved one and easier for family members, caregivers, and so forth to get around in the home.
Yeah, I see it says ramps, railings, bed rails, bed wedges, yeah, toiletries,
There's
and shower.
some good suggestions, some things that you can use, some things that you can buy. Pretty affordable kinds of things.
But you know what, Pat? I'm gonna tell you something. On the average, depending on the age of the person, these things don't come into play until somebody actually, you know, gets hurt. You know, if somebody's really hurt, then, you know, and everybody say, what can we do now? What can we do now? Some things you could have done earlier. So I'm going to just say this. Now, I'm not a fan of upstairs bedrooms. I have one, but I'm just saying, when you see that your parents are getting of age, don't be trying to force them to go upstairs. If you end up having to modify a room downstairs, it's best to be downstairs. How do you have parents upstairs unless you just got one bathroom? Okay, then you kind of stuck. But something has to be done about the stairs. The more stairs, the worse stairs to me. Okay, so and my mom picked the house with the upstairs, and I asked her when we were young, why we got to be upstairs? She said, in case your room is junky. Okay, well that was that. But when you get old, parents, you don't need to be upstairs. That's my take. I'm not an upstairs person. Everybody's not going to have a ranch style house, but at least find out what modifications you can make in your home to accommodate the aging parent.
I agree, and I preach this and talk about this all the time, that if you intend to age in place, then now is the time to make the necessary modifications.
That's right.
You can
That's
do the
right.
stair railing, or you may want to, aging in place doesn't mean going to a nursing home or an
Correct.
assisted living, but you may want to get another home, which is a one-level home.
Correct.
This is
Correct.
the consideration.
I'm telling you. Okay, so we have advice from caregivers, 5 steps to leap legal hurdles.
Which is
Okay.
always an issue.
I'm sorry.
I said, what is always an issue, that people wait too late to put a lot of their legal papers in order. And so this attorney, Norman Jean Richards, just simplified it and gave you 5 steps so that you won't have problems in getting information while you're in the hospital, or taking care of financial responsibilities for your loved one.
Okay.
He said, start now.
So start now. Okay. And I see it says, prioritize power of attorneys, build a team of experts, revenue existing legal documentation, understanding Medicaid and VA benefits for long-term care, determine the legal authorities needed. Okay, so some of that sound like you need a lawyer to do that, but on a general note, I also know if you can't afford some of these things, you can at least look over this page in particular, ladies and gentlemen, and get an idea of some of the things that you can do yourselves if you don't feel like you can afford legal consultation. And then, Pat, I believe in free legal services too. So for those who are low income to no income, you can seek out free legal services and still have some of these same questions answered.
Which is the very last page that we're going to cover, is a free legal service.
That's right. Okay, so let's go to page 20. This one here. Now, who here is this anonymous reporting for official help or learning opportunity? Where are we at on this page, Pat?
Well, the first 2 entries, which is always important because people often don't know if they're concerned about their family members who are self-neglecting, or if there's financial exploitation, if there's abuse, elder abuse, there's a way to report that anonymously, as well as if you're concerned about the driving of a loved one, there's a way to anonymously report that as well.
So I see for the, I mean, could you, but Pat, it says for taking the car keys, the request to drive evaluation form is a Secretary of State and online as Form E-DA88 at Michigan.gov SOS. Now, I've never heard of that form, and I'm sure this has got to be something kind of new here, so it does not relieve the identity. Okay, so I've never heard of this form, but is this a new concept from the state?
Oh no, it's not new. I've been running this same story for at least 5 years. We've been in business 7, but yes, and you can access the form online, or you can actually go to the Secretary of State to get the form, and you fill it out. Now, you have to give them your name and information, but the individual who you're requesting to be reevaluated, they never know who anonymously gave the state their name. So that's the anonymous part.
I tell you this, if you come across somebody who uses this, I want to know. We need to feature that, because I can't, you know what, I talk to people all the time about taking keys, from the parents, and I always tell them, don't take the keys from the parents. It's a negotiation process. Now, I'm going to be honest with my stepmom, we end up putting what we call dummy keys out because she was able to, get to the car. So if they were worried about her having a breakdown about driving, they put dummy keys out. My brothers put dummy keys out, and when she would take those keys to the car and they didn't work, she'd come back in and stop. Now, I'm not going to say that's going to work for everybody, but it's kind of hard to tell your parents or anybody, I'm taking your keys. And I don't say use the word take your keys. I mean, I'd rather tell somebody, can't find them, do something. But that word take the keys, that's a little strong. That's a little strong to me.
And so that's why we're not promoting take the keys. Instead, because what they get, the individual, they get an official letter from the Secretary of State stating that we need to reevaluate your life. And the person that I know that actually did this, the individual, the older adult who was required to be reevaluated, just kept saying, who did this? Who did this? I can't understand. But they had to go to the Secretary of State to be reevaluated.
Okay. All right. Well, fill me in. All right, so let's go to this report here. What do we have on find resources info here? What are we looking at on this page, Pat?
We were just looking at respite and other caregiver support. Again, the Alzheimer's Association has increased its respite scholarship. It's now $1,000. It was once $500. It's just a matter of having a diagnosis, a written diagnosis, and you call and you can apply for the scholarship. And then the Team Susie organization also provides scholarships. This Team Susie for dementia. Both of these are for caregivers to get some respite, some rest, some time to themselves. And I know with Team Susie, they pay the adult daycare center directly. And then I listed Daybreak, which is an adult day. Yeah, and it charges a minimal cost, but you can apply the dollars that you get from the scholarships to Daybreak.
Okay.
For your family.
Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty good there. I mean, anything to give a break to the caregiver who feels stressed out, overwhelmed, and needs some type of support, especially if you're a single child, and you don't have any additional family members to, piggyback on. And then those of us who have family members and you still can't piggyback on them. Okay, so I was feeling like an open space there. All right, so let's go to page 24 and let's see. Questions to screen potential in-home caregivers. Yeah, that's like the nanny care. Okay, so what we have here, Pat? 10 tips for family caregivers.
It's just a guide. I mean, you may have your own questions, but a lot of times some of these questions that we're asking families to consider asking someone when they're considering bringing someone in the home. And we call it caregiver martyrdom. Meaning that a lot of times there are caregivers who are saying, I'm the only one that can do this. And as a result of feeling like that, they're experiencing a caregiver.
Yep. So when
caregiver burnout, all of
right.
that.
I'm looking at number 6. Watch out for signs of depression and get help when you need it. And I don't think people understand that, one person cannot do all this alone, no matter if they're a single child or, or have multiple family members. You got to ask for help, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to let somebody in. And I'm going to tell you something, Pat. I always tell people, quit avoiding opening the door and the house is messy. The house has been messy, so what difference does it make? You need help. Avoid all that. Oh, I'm going to wait till I clean up my house. Well, if you ain't cleaned it up all this time, it don't matter. Okay? And that's just me. I'm like, people say, I'm not going to open my door. I'm like, really? But yet the situation is still the same. Yep. Yeah. So I'm hard on that. Okay, so Pat, our last page to discuss before we wrap up. A caregiver is someone who what?
Well, I'll tell you this, that what we know in the aging network, in the caregiver services world, is that a lot of people don't consider themselves caregivers. They don't self-identify for caregivers. So the Elder Law and Advocacy Center used this bulleted checklist, so to speak, for people to get more in tune that if you go to the grocery store, if you go to the pharmacy, even little things like that, you are a caregiver.
You
And
got that right.
so that's the leading up to the service that they provide to caregivers. They will help you draft all of those documents that you may have to pay thousands of dollars for if you were to go to a elder law firm. So
Okay.
utilize it. It's here for us.
Okay, let me put that up one more time so I can get that number off of there. So, ladies and gentlemen, all those who are interested in Elder Law and Advocacy Center that's in Redford, Michigan, call 313-937-8291, 313-937-8291 and get you some resources. Most definitely. So, well, Pat, it's a great day in the neighborhood, as our dear friend Phyllis Edwards would say. So I'm glad that you came today and shared this quarterly newspaper with us as usual. All right, and I got to go back to that cover page one more time for those of us who are looking for resources to get caregiving resources. This is the one you definitely want to read. You want to read all of them, but I want you to get this one because it's got something to help you out, ladies and gentlemen. So, Pat, I got to put that number up again if someone's interested in getting a paper from you. But I want you to hold tight while I tell our viewers we will be back, and I'll see you next quarter.
Next 2023.
Next quarter. Hold that thought.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides at aarp.org/caregiving.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know who I am. I'm your host, Patricia Rencher with Just Dance Talk Show, and I got to wrap up here, but I'm glad you had a chance to spend this day with us. And like I said, if we ever miss an opportunity to see you on our regular day, we'll make it up to you, all right? I'm your host, Marsha Florence with Just Dance, and what do I always say? If you got a question about a person with a disability, or if you just have a general question, don't be afraid to ask, just ask. See you next time.